My fellow degenerates, this is Locked In. As per usual, I'm your host, Mason Cameron at PFF_Mace on Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta at Vishal_Gupta 95. Ben had to fill in for you last week. I hope you're well and rested. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. I know we were talking about it. We all got to relax a little bit. Are you ready to get back into it, make some money tonight?
Absolutely. It was a fantastic Thanksgiving. So many games going on, whether it was soccer or football games. It was just a fantastic day. So yeah, I'm ready to get back in the saddle and get ready for the slate today.
Yeah, it was a super interesting day because we never get this type of World Cup soccer here in November, at the end of November. So that was definitely an interesting draw. It's hopefully the US can pull something out here. Hasn't looked super great so far, but I guess we'll see how it goes. We'll see how that one heads off to.
Yeah.
So for anybody who didn't check us out, we did over underdogs last night with Vaughn Moore. You can get that on our YouTube and on our Twitch pages. And tonight we're breaking down the main event. But first, for anybody that did watch that show, they know that we have a little bit of housekeeping to do in that regard as well. So we cleaned it up. After our, let's just say, not great week, the week prior, I may have just kind of skated our records for a little bit, hoping that we made good on our Thursday slate. We didn't quite make up the ground that I had hoped, but it's okay. We have to pay the piper eventually. I sadly have fallen below 50% V. It is atrocious. I'm down bad over here. It's okay though. We're going to figure it out. I do have 4 bad beats though on the year. And V, you've actually had 2 bad beats in the last 2 weeks. You missed one by like a half of a yard this last week. It's you hate to see it, but business as usual, V. We are still winning. At least you are still winning with your 9 wins with insurance. We play all of our cards with insurance. So anybody that doesn't know, whenever we play our underdog pick'ems card, we use the pick'em insurance that hedges your card so that if you do lose a pick, you still have the chance to win money. And we love to do that. We love winning money. And this is putting us right there. For the other bit of housekeeping we have, it's actually a good one because we did a deadlock heat in our NFL versus this week. Now, anybody that doesn't know, we do NFL versus over on importantnonsense.com. It's our piece that pits us against each other in a battle of wits going directly head to head on the book. It comes out every Wednesday. You don't want to miss it. To get access to that, you're going to want to check out our Patreon to get in our Discord and all that good stuff. But so last week, we actually split. And it's unfortunate because I'm really falling behind against the spread here. It is not looking great. I am 3-6-1, and I did not do so well this last week when we selected the Jets at the Pats. Pats -3.5. V, you were on the side of New England -3.5. I was on the side of the Jets +3.5. The game ended Jets 3, New England 10. An embarrassing debacle. I didn't even know that I was watching an NFL game most of the time. Excuse me. I'm getting choked up thinking about Zach Wilson's 77 total yards in that one. So, we hate to see that. But that's obviously music to your ears after a couple of slides. And now we're hanging tough here. The second pick, I actually did go ahead and take home, and that was we were doing Philly at Indy. The total was 45. I had the under. You had the over. The game ended Philly 17, Indy 16, which was a crazy outcome that I don't think, even though I picked this game, I still didn't see that being the final score in any way whatsoever. So that was another interesting draw. And that actually brings us to our picks for this week, V. We have a full disclosure for everybody. When we were selecting these picks for this week, I wrote these exact words to V. I said, let's go ahead and take Monday Night Football. Wow, that felt gross saying. And for anybody that doesn't know, this week for your primetime matchup in the NFL on Monday night, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers going against the Indianapolis Colts. And we're taking both the game spread and the game total here. You are leaning on Pittsburgh plus 2.5 and the under. I'm leaning towards Indy minus 2.5 in the over. The line for the game total has actually slightly moved down towards you at 39. What are you seeing when you see this matchup? I mean, I know that we can talk about it hypothetically because neither of us are going to even watch this matchup. So who's going to know if it happened the way that we thought it would? But what are you seeing when you see these two teams?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me go ahead and apologize for even picking the New England Jets game last week. That was bad on us, and I have a strong feeling we might be apologizing again next week because this game could be just as bad, to be honest. But looking at this game, the one area where I see like actual good football potentially is Pittsburgh's defense. I think getting TJ Watt back is going to be huge for them. We know what he did week one. He was completely dominant in that performance, just terrorizing Joe Burrow. Then he unfortunately gets a pec injury. He missed a lot of time. This is going to be his third game back, and I think we already saw that he's seems like he's in full health. The interception that he had last week against Burrow was phenomenal. So it looks like he's back to top performance. So if we get peak TJ Watt, this Steelers defense is going to be very good. They've given up quite a few points last week, but that was against a good quarterback in Joe Burrow, and maybe they're a little banged up elsewhere. But coming into this game against Matt Ryan, I really like the Steelers defense against a Matt Ryan led offense. I think that's a pretty big advantage in the Steelers' favor. So 2.5 isn't necessarily the best value. You'd like to get that at 3, but that essentially makes this game a pick 'em. And if I'm going to have to make a pick, I'd rather take the Steelers defense against Indy's offense. And I have not hated what I've seen from Kenny Pickett lately. I think he's playing very. I don't want to say good, but again, I wrote in our piece, like, relatively speaking, when you're talking about young quarterbacks,
Right.
I think he's doing all right. I'm not seeing the back-breaking mistakes that cost you games. He's making some nice throws. He's has a nice connection with George Pickens right now. I'm impressed from what I've seen with Kenny Pickett. So I think he can do enough to manage this game while Pittsburgh's defense kind of probably wins it for them. So that's why I like the Steelers to cover and for this game to go under. I just don't see where the points are going to come from in this game for either team to push this over the total of 39.
Yeah. See, and that's an interesting thing. For me, a lot of what it was actually the Pittsburgh defense. I felt like, yes, granted, they didn't have Watt back until this past week, but they still allowed 37. Now, Matt Ryan's not Joe Burrow by any means, so he's not going to put those numbers up. But I think that they can do, even a fraction of that. And that could go a long way to hitting an over here, in my estimation. Now, it is tough because these defenses have been a little middling, but Pittsburgh has a bunch of playmakers. For me, the biggest thing has definitely been the resurgence of this Colts team. Forget everything you know about this Colts team. They are a brand new team with Jeff Saturday. They seemingly have overcome every game that they've had. All of their market conditions every single week have gotten progressively tougher, even to this week. Now they're a favorite at home, which, I mean, we would never have thought about even 3-4 weeks ago that they'd be a favorite in pretty much any game, even this one at home. So that's an interesting, view of how well they've done thus far. And they just are going to keep answering the call. They're 2-0 against the spread with Saturday. I mean, now, who's to say that that's not more due to the return of Jonathan Taylor, who has been excellent, which you highlighted in your piece, how excellent Najee Harris has been. And I think that, we touched on Pickett. I think a lot of Pickett's, ability to play effectively as a game manager has come to their ability to now run the football, which has really helped them. And that's the same thing can be said for Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor, who Jonathan Taylor has been excellent. 5.25 yards per carry in the last 2 games, 231 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's playing great. The Colts know that they can't rely on Ryan to win games with his arm, but they do know they can rely on him to keep the offense on schedule. And I think that that's going to make a huge difference. In his recent games since being elevated back to the starting lineup, 73% completion percentage, 0 interceptions. That's kind of where I teeter with the spread on this game. Now at 2.5 is where I like it. At 3, I'd probably stay away. But the idea here is, I think if I'm put down to it and it comes down to these two quarterbacks, who's going to make the mistake that tilts the game the other way, I would put more money on it being Pickett than it being Ryan, at least in recent weeks, because of how these teams have played. So that's going to be it's going to tell us a lot about this Colts team for sure. Because like I said, they get progressively harder market conditions every week. They started as a huge underdog in their first game. They were a slight underdog in their last game, and now they're a home favorite. So we have to figure out where this team lies moving forward so we can gauge their value against like opponents. And I like this Steelers team as a matchup because they are very much a like opponent for me. I like the over here just because I think the Steelers defense has just been tough. I mean, they not tough like it isn't great. Like
it's difficult opponents. I mean, they played Jalen Hurts a few weeks ago. They played Joe Burrow last week. When they played a bad offense and Andy Dalton, and the Saints 2 weeks ago held them to 10 points, they showed out. It seems like, they can dominate the bad competition. They struggle against the good competition. I would still put the Colts in bad competition, at least offensively.
That could definitely be it for sure.
That's where I stand, at least.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense because they might be worse looking on paper than they are like in reality. Because like you said, they face tough matchups. Because like on paper, they're allowing the 6th most points per game over their last 3. Like you just stated, their last 2 road games were against tougher opponents than these Colts. So it's going to be an interesting see if they're going to, if they play up to that standard, like you just said that they did against the Colts. So that is going to be one we're not going to watch. So, I mean, who knows how not. We'll check the score and the highlights after. But so that does this for our NFL versus, and hopefully I'm not eating my words by picking these Colts again. But I guess we'll see. So into our game picks for the night. And so anybody that doesn't know, we don't target every single game. So if there's anything that anybody's watching that you're interested in and you're curious about and you want to know what we might think about some of the lines, get into our Discord, shoot us some messages. We love answering it. We set up custom tickets for people. We just set some up today in the Discord for some money line, first touchdown winners. So go check those out if you haven't already. But we're heading into our game picks. And the first one of which, V,
why do you do this to yourself?
I don't know. I think I'm a glutton for punishment, frankly.
Seems like it.
I'm a masochist. I must hate myself, make life harder on myself. But I'm here not to bet on the Broncos necessarily, but to bet the under. Yes, the crucial unders that these Broncos have been hitting pretty much every single week. I mean, there's just not a whole lot to say about these two teams. And I hate to beat a dead Bronco, but this Denver team is not offensively sound. And I'm really sorry for the corny joke. I know V liked that one, but for all the people at home, I am very sorry for the corny joke. But Denver has the worst scoring offense in the NFL, 14.7 points per game. Yeah, let that sink in. A team with Russell Wilson at quarterback, multiple first-round wide receivers, highly drafted running backs, and lots of money on the offensive line. 14.7 points per game.
That brings a so-called offensive head coach.
And yeah, I know, right? That's hilarious. How some of these guys get their job through anything but nepotism is crazy to me. But anyway, so Carolina isn't really that much of a better offense. They're only scoring 18.8 points per game and just 16.3 over the last 3, including a measly 3 this past week against Baltimore. Now, Baltimore is a good team, but if you've watched any Baltimore football this year, They're not this lockdown team that's going to drop anybody to 3 points. And, Carolina just did not answer the call. So now Denver ranks as one of the best units in the NFL defensively in nearly every category, as long as they're not playing the Raiders, which is another horribly, horribly sad. We are distraught here in Denver to lose to the Raiders twice. It is painful. It's painful to watch. And Carolina, they're not really that great statistically defensively. They're kind of middling, but it's more than enough to hold down 2020 Russell Wilson, who is just obscene. And I think that the dysfunction goes even a little bit further than how they play on the field. I don't know if you listened to Roster of the People before we went on for Over Underdogs on Wednesday, but Neil was talking about a big narrative loop that's going around the Denver media, at least following the release of Melvin Gordon, was that Melvin wasn't cut because he fumbled. Melvin was cut because he walked into the locker room after the game and started bumping Future.
Wow.
So if that's the issue, if that's the case, this team's problems run much deeper than X's and O's. And it's going to be an interesting draw. Nothing's going right for them. This is one of the lowest game totals I've seen all year. And I'm still not budging.
It is the lowest, to be honest.
It is. And I'm still not budging on the under. 36.5 points is abysmal. And we're going to talk about how abysmal that is here in a couple of picks in comparison to some of these other game totals on the list. But I'm shocked. We're 12 weeks into the season, and I would have never anticipated this. And I would have never anticipated one of the highest profiting picks I've had all year to be taking Broncos unders. It's obscene. It's crazy. And it ruined my dynasty team because I was heavy on Broncos offensive players to do well this season. So
you had that Wilson Cortland Sutton stacked in.
I did. And I couldn't even sell it, V. We had our trade deadline. For anybody that doesn't know, we had our fantasy football trade deadline in our dynasty league that me and V play in with a bunch of the guys over here at IN. And I couldn't even give away a lot of these players. Now, me and V, we're talking a little bit in the background about Tyreek Hill. But, I thought, he might be of value next year. So I held off on that. But I couldn't even give away the Wilson Sutton stack. And that was crazy to me. But anyway, do you see anything that I'm not seeing with these two teams, V? I mean,
no, it makes sense to me. I mean, I remember a few years ago, we had that great Chiefs-Rams game. And the talk ahead of that game was, how high could you make the total? And people would not bet the over. And they just couldn't make that game total high enough. People still kept taking the over, and obviously that one hit. This feels like, the reverse. How low can you make this game total, and would people not take the under? And it feels like, I'm sure these odds makers would actually like to make it lower than what it is, but it just wouldn't work out. Mathematically, I think at some point you reach a point where people would have to just take the over. But this is bad. I mean, where are the points coming from? The Panthers are starting Sam Darnold in this game. Is just, maybe he has some magic left, but why would you ever bet on that? Yeah, there's just going to be a train wreck. If you can't score more than 16 points against the Raiders at home, how are you going to score any points against the Panthers on the road, who have a better defense than the Raiders do? Yeah, just not watching this game for 1 second. It's not going to show up on Red Zone. It's not. It's not a good one. Yeah, the under is the only play here.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And you hit the nail on the head. In the time that I set this line earlier this morning, or not set this line, but pulled this line out, because we've been, identifying lines all week. But by the time I pulled this line for the show, it was 36.5. It's now down to 36 on Betting Pros, and 75% of the wagers on this pick are still on the under. So you hit it on the head. It's literally, how low can we make it before people are just not going to bet the under? And it's just not working out for them. They haven't been able to peg this number all season. It continues to get lower, and I'm still confident that you're going to be right there. You might be closer this week than we have in past weeks, but like you said, where the hell are they going to get points from? you can't buy points from the NFL like you can buy them from the book. And this isn't going to turn out that well. So now that we've pulled the Band-Aid off first thing, quick and easy, now we get to go into some better games that make fun of other teams that aren't teams that I cheer for. And that namely being, we have the Baltimore Ravens at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm liking the -3.5 for Baltimore. I know that we talked earlier in the week and you were even on the -4 there. You also like the under at 44 here. What are you seeing when you see this matchup?
Yeah, I think you said a minute ago that, the Ravens aren't necessarily world beaters on defense, but I think that's kind of actually starting to change right now. Not only did they add Roquan Smith a couple of weeks ago, but this team is now starting to get healthy. They got Ty Spouser back a couple of weeks ago, and the report is Marcus Williams is coming back this week. And if people have forgotten, Marcus Williams was fantastic to start the season. He had like 3 or 4 interceptions in his first few games. He was like the best part of their secondary.
Losing Marcus Williams was probably the biggest blow to this defense because that is an all-pro right there. He really solidified the back end for them. Even when they were letting up a bunch of yards, he was keeping them in games with turnovers.
Yep, he was absolutely an all-pro favorite heading into his injury. So getting him back, I think this defense is kind of ready to go on a tear. They held the Saints to 13 points a few weeks ago before their bye, and then they held the Panthers to 3 points last week. So 16 points total in their last 2 games. I think this defense is ready to, just tear it up and become the best defense in the league right now, just because of all the talent they have and the fact that they're getting healthier. And the Jags, as much as, we've seen improvement from them this year, they're not anything more than probably an average offense right now. I don't think it's going to be too difficult to stop them right now. I'd be pretty shocked if they got to over 20 points in this game. So I think, the Jaguars aren't going to score points. I think this game definitely goes under because I'm not overly impressed with Baltimore's offense right now either. Them only scoring 13 points last week was not good, especially, I had Baltimore -13. And when you see the scoreboard and they held their opponents to 3 points, there's no way you should never cover that spread. And somehow they failed to cover because their offense couldn't do anything. I mean, Carolina's defense is good. They have some good players, but there's no reason Baltimore's offense shouldn't have been able to do better. So I'm still a little concerned. Bateman's not going to be in this game. Maybe they get Gus Edwards back this week, but I don't know how much difference that's going to make. I have concerns about that, but I think their defense is just going to be so good. That's what I'm projecting. Their defense is going to be able to take it up a couple notches. That I definitely like the under, and I am willing to go with them covering the spread on this one, whether it's 3.5 or 4. I do think their defense is going to be good enough to kind of carry this one on their own.
Yeah, in what drew me to this one too is that when you look at both of these games, you're going to sit here and say that this Jags team is this much significantly better than the Carolina team that they got 12.5. They laid 12.5 for this past week. I just don't see that now. I feel bad, Ben. If you're watching, I'm sorry, buddy. They're not my Jags anymore. They're yours alone. I'm washing my hands of them. The Jags, their MO is to score, like you said, 17 points, show a lot of promise, and just drop games. That's just what they've done this year. They're not just poor straight up record. They have a poor against the spread record too. They're 1-6 against the spread since the start of October. That's really, really bad. Yeah. I'm surprised this number wasn't even higher, like I said, as a 12.5 point home favorite last week versus Carolina. I get that, their offense hasn't been that great. I'm not that sure that they even have to be that great. And like you said, if you're going to hold these teams down, which they played extremely well last week defensively, and by all accounts, I think that they're going to get better even this week. Like you said, they're getting ready to go on a tear. Now, it doesn't take a whole lot of points for them to cover this game, I don't think. Right. So it makes too much sense to go even minus the 3.5 and the under here. And when we talked about this earlier on in the week, it was at 4. I don't see why it's going towards Jacksonville.
Yeah, I don't know where that necessarily that money is coming from. Yeah, that one's a little surprising, especially again with the news of Marcus Williams reportedly
Right.
being able to play in this game. And yeah, I don't really see why necessarily this one would move towards Jacksonville.
Yeah. This is one of those where I'm sure some of the big name handicapper pulled out some crazy like Jags are 5-0 against the spread at home after Thanksgiving and whatever,
Coming off a bye, whatever it
It's
is.
just something stupid that is like we've put a number of times where uh these trends are only so valuable. That's why like recent trends like last 3 games or in, at
In
home
season trends, I find more
are
valuable than
way
year
more
over year
valuable.
trends.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've gone over this ad nauseum that these year over year trends just don't hit. And maybe there's not one. Maybe the market just sees this Jags team differently than we do. It wouldn't be the first time, but I don't see it. And I'm
Yeah, it
fully
could just be
willing.
again them. They could be undervaluing the Ravens offense, which I wouldn't fault them for. I think where we stand is that we're projecting that the Ravens defense is a little underrated right now, and they're going to
Exactly.
start showing out. I think that's kind of where we stand.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I think that this is actually even going to be a decently interesting game to watch. Hopefully. I mean, maybe. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
So into our next pick here. This is gonna be the easiest blowout we take all year. And I've said that probably 3 times, but there has been how many times have we had 10 plus point favorites on this show? Cash, like a number of times, because there's not a ton of parity in the NFL right now. I mean, granted, you might be able to say that a lot of times, but there's really not a lot right now. And this game identifies probably the biggest talent disparity we have right now in the NFL. It's bad. And to get a spread this big, to cover a spread this big, you have to have an explosive offense. And that is exactly what Miami has right now. There aren't many offenses in the league that are as hot as the Dolphins right now. Over the last 3, they lead the NFL in points per game at 35 points per game. On the other side, Houston, 14.3. They are the second fewest in the NFL. They just benched Davis Mills. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jason. Your guy is now on the pine, and they're going to start Kyle Allen. This is the easiest 14 ever. And I wish I would have put even more on it at the 12 or whatever it was on Monday when we all talked about it in our opening line values pick. What do you see when you see this game at 13 and a half?
Yeah, so yeah, in that opening line values piece, this was my pick was Miami minus 12 because I fully expected this game to get up to at least 14 points before kickoff. I think it's at 14 right now.
It is.
And if it gets to that 14 and a half, that's kind of where things get a little tough just because you have to play with that hook of getting 2+ touchdowns. So if you're getting it at below 14, you just kind of have to jump on it. I mean, the one weakness Miami has is their defense, and there's just no way Houston can take advantage of that right now. I mean, Kyle Allen has not started the game in 2 years, and he was on a different team when he started. So it's just like, how is he going to come in and be able to do anything offensively? I don't like this matchup one bit. Houston is the worst defense against the rush, and we are now seeing Miami incorporating a solid rushing game after the acquisition of Jeff Wilson. I think Mostert's going to be probably out in this game, so this could be a huge Jeff Wilson game. He's not going to have any trouble, and then if he's not going to have any trouble, what are you going to do against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? I mean, it's going to be a mess. This would be, I mean, yeah, this would be a shocker if Miami couldn't do this at home, coming off a bye. Yeah, this should just be a pretty easy one for me.
Yeah, and and we were talking a little bit about some picks we were actually making for our guy Thomas over in the Discord. He was looking for, because where they're at, they only can do game picks and first touchdown scorers. So definitely juice lines for the book there. But one that I liked in that game was actually the money line for the Dolphins, which is the easiest bet you'll get all year, with a first down or with a first touchdown from Jalen Waddle, which is at a considerable value, especially if he doesn't draw Derek Stingley. So when you think about that, and then just like you put, if you also take one money line for Jeff Wilson and cover all your bases,
Yep.
I think that you're going to hit one of the easiest plus 900, plus 750s you're going to hit all year with those two picks right there. So that's a great way to attack this game, in my opinion. And that's also a great way to identify games when they have these huge lines. And say you're not like us and you're not as bullish on the Finns just absolutely mopping the floor with the Texans, even though you should. That's a way you can attack this game and still make a lot of money off of it, off of the other options that your book is putting out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Touchdown scores, because anything paired with this money line, like these are bets that I would be surprised if our guy Ben Hunt isn't writing up a whole slate from this game specifically, because when you get matchups like this, it is huge opportunity for offensive production, and he loves to attack those type of money line, parlay, same game parlays, and he's making a ton of money off of them. So anybody that doesn't know, go check that out. That's going to be out Saturday. You're not going to want to miss it. And I think that I would be hard pressed to not see one of these in there for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Another game that nobody's going to watch. Oh, all right. Into kind of a sad game. We have the Chicago Bears at the New York Jets. I'm sitting on the under 39.5. And I hate it because I was really loving watching Justin Fields play.
Yeah.
And now he's hurt. So it's like,
I thought you were going to say you love it because you enjoyed watching Zach Wilson throw for 77 yards.
I did enjoy that too, but well, like in a cynical way, like you idiot, you should have known that, like, because man, that was ugly. And I'm a little bit of an asshole. So like I'm a hater at heart. So when he got 77, I just laughed my ass off. But anyway, so Zach Wilson might not be the quarterback there anymore, but I don't think that really matters, at least for them being an explosive unit that's going to put up a bunch of points. Now, maybe that helps them to win tight, close games later on the stretch, but I don't know. I think they need a lot more.
Can you believe, though, that going from Zach Wilson to Mike White actually jumped this line from -4.5 to -6?
Yeah.
I mean, that I don't know if there's anything in the world that will tell you more about the situation than the fact that a backup coming in actually makes you a bigger favorite. I mean, so maybe this offense will actually be slightly more explosive. I mean, you're not going to find that anywhere else in the world.
I 100% agree. And it makes no sense, especially given you're like the number 2 overall pick was that quarterback. And this guy, Mike White, was taken in the 6th, 7th round. Like,
who knows?
it's one of those things that you couldn't write. If we wrote this story as like some people hate Draft Day, the movie Draft Day.
It's a ridiculous movie
because it doesn't make any sense. If that happened in the NFL, we would be like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Nope. How did this happen? And here we are, and we're at that exact moment. You couldn't write this. You would not believe us if we told you this prior to this happening. And, Mike White, I still think it's a mistake, frankly, like to jump the line 3 points for a backup quarterback, especially when it's like Mike White's not this guy that's like chucking the ball down the field. If you listen to our guys over on the fantasy side, you've known this because they've said this for years. Like, go get your Jets running backs right now because Mike White is the check down daddy. He checks it down to everybody. Doesn't matter what the look is, doesn't matter what the defense is giving him. He's going to hit that running back and he's going to do it at a really high level. And that doesn't equate to points really. So I'm going to fade on that. They also have a pretty strong defense that is going to hold down a Chicago team that isn't going to have their best player at 100% because Justin Fields' shoulder, correct? Or did they say if it was
shoulder, non-throwing shoulder?
Yeah, non-throwing shoulder. Okay. I was worried for a little while that he might have really messed up his collarbone and they just didn't say anything because, his post-game interview or his interview the next day where he's like in visible pain is kind of hard to watch. Yeah. And to think that he's going to start this week and excel when his ability as a player is amplified by his use of his legs and his ability to break the pocket. If he's scared to take contact because of that shoulder, they're going to become a one-dimensional team, and they're going to go back to the Justin Fields that we've seen that throws, 116 total yards and has 28 rushing yards. And, it's just not going to be a great draw.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, and one of the things that shocked me and why I'm so in on this one is because of kind of something I said before with the Broncos game. How can a game that is starting a banged up Justin Fields and Mike White equate to more points than any game involving Russell Wilson? That's another one that we couldn't write.
That's gotta hurt, right? You gotta post. You put that in the message boards for all the Broncos fans.
I know, man.
This is the state of our team right now.
If I put that in one of my group chats with my buddies from town, they will absolutely eat me alive. I swear. It would not be pretty. Yeah. So, there's just not a lot of points to be found in this matchup, frankly. Even with as porous as the Bears defense has been, are we expecting Mike White to come and blow the doors off of them? And I don't know. I think that this is an easy under 30 game. They could have dropped it 5 more points and we'd still probably be right there. But then,
so the only thing I'll say on this one is, the Bears are missing 2 starters in the secondary. They just lost Brisker and Gordon to concussions. They're going to be out this week. So an already weak secondary is going to be worse this week with their backup. So, I would not be surprised. I think it's actually expected that the Jets could put up somewhere in the range of 24 to maybe 27 points. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I think this Bears defense is that bad, and I think Mike White can at least throw the ball towards the receivers and not just overshoot them constantly. So I think that's possible. And if Justin Fields were able to get out there, even if he was banged up, he could still probably, even against a good Jets defense, get you in the range of maybe 14 to 17 points. And if they both hit, the top end of that range, you're talking about, slightly going over. But, if Trevor Siemian comes in, no shot. I would be surprised to see them probably even get to double-digit points, to be honest. So, this is also a game I have circled. I'm just kind of waiting to get the final news about Justin Fields' status. And if he's out, you have to jump on the under. There's just no doubt about it. If he's in, you still probably like the under, but there is more of a range of possibility of this one hitting the over just barely.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin Fields' health if we think about it, if we start counting out players, Justin Fields' health as the best player on the field in this game is going to be a huge deciding factor in it for sure. And just his ability to play, we talked about this a little bit in the Discord when we were going over some picks for some of the subscribers, that scares me, the shoulder. But then again, the NFL has stuff that is not legal to other people. So
they got these painkillers.
They got these painkillers, I played Blitz the League, where you used to stab the guy with the needle on the sideline, and it was a mini game. And as corny and crazy as that sounds, that's what they do over in the NFL. And he might feel like Superman come Sunday. So I guess we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be an interesting draw to see if the Jets can keep playing well enough. I feel bad if they had if this team had Matt Ryan. No, maybe that's bad.
If this team had Justin Fields, they could have drafted.
Yeah,
playoff team.
You're there.
Champions.
You are on to something there, my friend. You are on to something there. And we are on to Cincinnati. Cincinnati at Tennessee. In fact, this is a game that I'm selecting by myself again. I don't like to double up too much, but we actually have a lot of overlap on our picks. So we're going to get into some more of these picks here in a minute. But for me, I'm liking Tennessee +3 here, which is super weird because...
Wow, that's a big jump. I saw it at 1.5 just like yesterday. That's a pretty big jump.
It is, right? And it's strange because I didn't see it. And I wrote this game up for my opening line value picks because in my research, excuse me, in my research, I'm shocked. I am shocked. The Tennessee Titans, V, are the best team, have the best record against the spread in the NFL this season. They are 8-2.
Yep.
Now, that's a surprise to pretty much anybody that's watched the show, at least in the first half, because we sold on Tennessee for a long time. But all they did from that point was play their style of football above expectation.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because they were a worse team on paper. They got worse throwing the ball. So all they did was run the ball more. They've played decent enough defense to hold teams down.
They played awesome defense, to be honest. I mean,
Sure.
I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, but if you look at the points scored for Tennessee before last week, they had not scored more than 24 points in a single game.
Right.
And they still had like 7 wins before last week.
Right.
I mean, that just tells you all you need to know about
I think
how well their defense have been playing.
Right. And I think a lot of what it is like on paper, they look like they're more middling because they were like they were pretty bad early on.
Yeah.
But then they picked everything up and they've just been playing great. Like you said, their offense hasn't given them much chance, but they continue to win.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing. Now, the Bengals are also a good against the spread team at 7-3. So they're not really that far behind. But I feel like they've kind of shown some cracks. So the last time this Titans team dropped a spread was in week 2 against a really tough Buffalo team when they were at their heights.
Yeah.
And so I'm not really sure why they would be laying 3 at home, or why Cincy would be laying 3 on the road when this is the better team against the spread. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And like I said, Cincy's defense has been showing some cracks. They allowed 30 last week to Kenny Pickett's Steelers. Now, we highlighted this game on the opposite end that, like, the Steelers, allowing 37 to Joe Burrow, I mean, isn't great, but it's Joe Burrow. Now, Cincy allowing 30 to Kenny Pickett is a head scratcher. And this Pittsburgh team, or that Pittsburgh team, employed a very similar strategy that this Tennessee team is going to do. They're going to play tough defense. They're going to run the ball. And I expect them to do it at a much higher level because they have a guy named Derrick Henry, and they know what to do with him. They know how to give him the ball. They give him the ball when they're supposed to, and they don't look back. They put the ball in their best players' hands, and they live with the consequences. And this year, it's turned out better for them than not. If they continue to play some stingy defense, now Cincinnati erupted for a ton of points. And I mean, maybe they do the same thing that they did against Pittsburgh, but I think that was more of a fluky kind of thing than like, hey, they're going to continue to just roll for all these points every single week. I think that Tennessee's going to control the ball, make it really hard for the Bengals to get Burrow as many shots at it as he's going to want. And this one's going to come down to it. It's going to be pretty close towards the end. And I like the 3 at home. Tennessee plays extremely well at home. So are you seeing anything else in this game, V, that I'm not highlighting here?
Yeah, this one's definitely interesting. That's a pretty big jump, like we mentioned. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the expectation that Jamar Chase is going to be back in this game. I mean, I don't know. I was staying away from this game this whole week just because at 1.5, this game is essentially a pick 'em. And I think these teams are just a little too close, too hard to figure out for my liking. This is a rematch of the divisional game last year where the Bengals pulled it out at the last second. A lot of the reason the Bengals were able to win that game was because Tannehill just kind of imploded. He had 3 interceptions in that game. But during the regular season, Tannehill has just continued to prove, at least during his stint with the Titans, that he's not going to make those back-breaking mistakes in the regular season. As once we get to the playoffs, it's a little bit of a different story for him. But if he's not going to make those kind of back-breaking mistakes, if you're getting a full field goal, that's kind of hard to pass up. I would still definitely avoid this game if you're getting less than 3 because at a pick 'em, it's really anybody's choice on this one. I could see this going either way. But if you're getting the full 3, I can definitely get on board with the Titans there.
Right. That's where the real value is, for sure. The 3 and being at home. I was expecting it to move a little bit towards Tennessee just because of some of the things I said, but like you said, with Jamar Chase's health coming out and that jumped the line, I think this is now one that you kind of have to sprinkle into your, portfolio this
Yeah, and
week.
if we saw what Najee Harris did, he had a very good game last week. Who knows what Derrick Henry can do?
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. I can definitely get on board with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And then into our next game on the slate, which has actually been the surprisingly sound Chargers, at least against the spread, against the Cardinals. The Cardinals will be getting back Murray this week. That is what, or at least reports are that they should be expecting him back. That's what's actually moved this line from 2.5 to 3, which is,
Half a point for
half a point.
Colt McCoy to Kyler Murray. What does that tell you about the
that means
Cardinals?
that means put Mike White in the Hall of Fame if he's getting 3 for coming in and Kyler gets a half. So, what are you seeing when you're liking that the Chargers -3 on the road here? What are you seeing with this matchup?
Yeah, this is just a straight anti-Cardinals pick. This is an atrocious team. I had them on +8 at Monday night earlier this week, and that did not work out for me. And I just can't back this team. The Cardinals have 4 wins this year. You want to guess who the quarterbacks were in those 4 games that they won?
Tell us, B. Tell
You want
us.
me to tell you? They beat Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Andy Dalton, and John Wolford. I think Herbert's just a little bit better than those guys. I could be wrong. There seems to be some debate out there that Herbert's not good. I don't know where people are getting this idea, but let me just tell you, from our perspective, Herbert's freaking awesome. He's a fantastic quarterback. I'm gonna take the full 3 in this game. This is just a terrible Cardinals team. Every time they've lost this year, they've lost by at least 3 points. So they don't, they're not a team that's going to keep it very close. When they do lose, they typically get blown out. I think this Chargers offense is getting better each week. Keenan Allen seems to be fully healthy. Mike Williams is going to be out, but Joshua Palmer has proved that he's a very capable receiver in this system. He's done a good job. Arizona's secondary is along the 10th most passing yards per game, and their front 4 does not generate very much pressure at all. So this should be a clean game for Justin Herbert. If you saw the Cardinals' performance last week where they just kind of gave up at the end, that was embarrassing. This is just not a good team. Rondale Moore is going to be out. Hollywood Brown is expected to be back, but he might be on a pitch count. I don't see anything out of this Cardinals team. It's an embarrassment, and it's bad when they have to start cutting things out of Hard Knocks because there's just too much shit going on in that locker room. So this is a joke of a franchise right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You can tell that there's not a lot of buy-in there. They aren't playing very hard. Games that they should have a great chance in, they're just not. They're nowhere near. And so as much as we talk about like expectations, this is a team that's playing well below them. And now we talk about the Chargers maybe not playing up to their expectations. This Chargers team is 7-3 against the spread. Why are they 7-3 against the spread with one of the worst defenses in the NFL? Ask yourself that. It's probably because of Justin Herbert.
Yep.
Like for anybody on Twitter,
he was more than good enough to win that game last week. That game was not on him. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
It's these things that people say in NFL Twitter to get clicks and things that, is Justin Herbert washed? Is Justin Herbert, just because he's not playing the MVP ball that, everybody expected from him. Now he's doing literally everything that he can with the team that's around him. You have to realize that he's had none of his receivers for a sizable portion of the season. His number 1 target is perpetually treating a hammy.
His top 2 top targets are just in and out. Yeah.
It's all the time. And so, if this team were fully healthy, and we keep talking about it, if this team were fully healthy, like they would be playing as good as they are, but they often get hurt and they're still playing well. And I think 3, even on the road, are odds makers watching the dysfunction? They must not have an HBO subscription because they're not watching the dysfunction of this team where you can tell receivers don't believe in the quarterback doesn't believe in the blocking, the running backs don't believe in each other, and the defense believes the world is flat, and that's where we sit because they're It's bad. It's bad over there in
Yeah, until the
Arizona.
Cardinals get Travis Kelce on their team, there's no way they're going to win this game because he seems to be the only person who can just constantly rip through the Chargers.
Exactly. Exactly. So into our next game, and we have another AFC West powerhouse in the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Seattle Seahawks. And we're actually both on the Seahawks minus 3.5. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Envy, you're liking the over 47.5. And to be honest, as long as they're, the only team that the Raiders can beat are the Broncos. So I think the Hawks are safe this week.
Yeah.
What are you seeing when you see this game, though?
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep rolling it back with the Seahawks. I mean, they did, have a tough loss a couple weeks ago in Germany against the Buccaneers. But you saw in the second half, Geno Smith was pretty great. After his unfortunate red zone fumble, he had a couple dots in the red zone for touchdowns. So I still really like the Seahawks team. They continue to impress. I think their offense is just very, very good, and I don't think they're going to have very much trouble against this Raiders defense.
That's it. Geno Smith on the Jets.
No, you wanted to go right back to where it started? Give him a second chance? That would be interesting, right?
That's the one. That's the one.
That's
They'd
the
be a
one,
playoff
yeah.
team with Geno right now.
No doubt. No doubt they would be a playoff team. They would be winning that division. Let's keep that straight.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I don't think this is going to be very difficult for the Seahawks offense. They're top 10 in points scored. They should be able to move the ball at will. The Raiders allowing the 9th most passing yards per game. They're not going to be able to stop both Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Plus, you have Marquise Goodwin just kind of coming out of nowhere to put up a fantastic season. I did have the over 47.5, but I might have to rethink that one. The reports came out that Josh Jacobs got put on the injury report today, and if he's out, I might have to switch this pick up. The Seahawks are allowing the 5th most rushing yards per game, so I thought this could have been a big Josh Jacobs game, and I thought there would be a good chance that the Raiders could put up 20-plus points, behind Josh Jacobs' rushing ability. But if he's out, that could make things a little tougher. I mean, I think the Seahawks can get to that 20, 30 points range, but 20 to 30 point range. But if Jacobs is out, then I think the Raiders would struggle to get to 20 points. So we'll have to wait and see on his status. I might switch that over pickup, but I'm still definitely on the Seahawks minus 3.5.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's really been the only weak point for the Seahawks this year, as they've played extremely well offensively, and their defense was porous at the beginning of the year. But I mean, we've highlighted a couple times over the last few weeks, their defense has played a lot better, especially in the secondary. So if
They
the
only
Raiders,
gave up 21 points in that loss to Tampa Bay. So, I mean, even though they lost it, I think their defense still played okay. I mean, they did get gashed in the rushing game, but other than that, they had an
right,
okay performance defensively.
right, exactly, and you have to keep up with them. So, like, because they're going to be able to play their game, control the ball. They're going to dictate their game, which is a strong asset for any team, especially against a team that has struggled to find their own identity all year. Like, if I were to sit here and say, V, what are the Raiders like? What do the Raiders want to do this week?
I
Like,
have no
I
idea.
don't
It's
know.
either going to be a Devontae Adams game, or it's
Figure it
going to be a
out.
Josh Jacobs game, or it's going to be a nothing game. You don't know what you're
Right.
getting out of them each week.
It's like they have this elite all pro receiver, this former MVP candidate at quarterback, a decent enough running game, supposedly an offensive coach. They can't play a lick of defense. Like you'd hope that they would kind of push the pace and try to play that way, but it doesn't look like they do that. And they definitely don't do it efficiently. So this is a far stretch from the McDaniels offenses we've seen. And it's probably the worst I've ever seen the Raiders in a long time. But I mean, what do I have to say? They continue to beat the Broncos. So good on them, I guess.
Yeah.
All righty. Into the next game on our slate. And we have the Rams at the Chiefs. And
Are 62% of the people really on the Rams? What is going on here?
I
really, we're gonna bet on Bryce Perkins. Is that what we're doing?
I didn't even realize that said 62. That's more of a shock than anything in this game, and that's exactly what, like you just said. And we've talked about this a lot especially with game totals. And it comes down to the classic innuendo we say on this show. It takes two to tango. And I mean, we've never actually said it like that, but the message still resonates. And our guy Von Moore wrote this up in his opening line value pick of the week. And it's really just like KC is going to have to surpass the whole game total by themselves.
I think they could do it.
I mean, and they could. They really could. But you have to think that when they're up 35-0, they're going to eventually take the foot off the gas. So those are the kind of things that it's really just them competing against themselves because, as you just said, my cat is knocking things off my desk. Wonderful. As you just said, this Rams team is starting Bryce Perkins. Now, if anybody doesn't know Bryce Perkins, I'm not upset. He is an undrafted player from Virginia, transfer from Arizona State. Only reason I knew this because I had to go look up his wiki because his Pro Football Reference page was empty.
Wow.
Empty. Now,
he wears 2 gloves, so I was very confused watching him in the game last week. I just thought he was like a gadget player. I didn't know he was a quarterback.
We already know how double gloves works. Go ask Teddy. Go ask Teddy.
Teddy 2 gloves.
Teddy 2 gloves. Yeah, so I mean, this Rams offense was DOA. They were dead on arrival, even with Stafford and Kupp. And it's because their protection was trash. They haven't been able to get anything going all year offensively. And then we turn around and now they're without their 2 best players, at least on offense. So I don't, under is an easy enough draw here because, like I said, you think the Chiefs have to take their foot off the gas at some point. They're going to need to cover at least 75% of this number for this to even be in play.
Yep.
But can we just talk a second? People, who is telling you to bet even at 15.5? Who's telling you to bet on the Rams?
Yeah, just look at the injury report. I have a feeling people might not be aware that Stafford has already been ruled out for this game.
It has to be because why? Just why? This isn't even backdoor cover territory.
Just look at the play-by-play logs from the game last week when Bryce Perkins was in. I read it because, unfortunately, I had the Rams in that game, so I was trying to keep up and see if they could keep in it. And I just kept saying Bryce Perkins sacked, Bryce Perkins sacked, Bryce Perkins sacked, Bryce Perkins sacked. And that's against a bad New Orleans defense.
Yeah.
Chiefs with Chris Jones, he might have 10 sacks in this game. It's not gonna be
pretty. What's the single game record? Can I take a pick out on what somebody breaking the single game sack record against this team? Because it's that bad. Yeah. It is that bad there. And I hate to keep I guess Super Bowl winners don't always come out unless you're like the Chiefs or any team that Tom's ever played on. A lot of the time, Super Bowl winners come out pretty sluggish. The Broncos did after Super Bowl 50. I know that, the
that was
Ravens,
a new quarterback at least.
Yeah, and I know that the Ravens kind of, struggled a little bit after they won and but man, I don't think I've ever quite seen a drop off like this Rams team that you can't directly be no more Peyton Manning or
right.
No more of this guy. And it's they got worse on the offensive line, but by all accounts, they shouldn't be this bad, or at least as bad as they've been.
As bad as they've been offensively, can we just talk about how bad the defense has been? How do you get torched by Andy Dalton last week? I just can't get over that performance. How does Jalen Ramsey get absolutely burned in the slot by a rookie? I know Chris Olave is good, but we're 12 weeks into the season. We know what his game is. He's a burner. He's a deep threat. How do you let him go by you for a deep touchdown? How does Andy Dalton look like a top quarterback in this league when you still have Aaron Donald up front? I was so embarrassed watching that performance last week. I took the Rams plus 3.5 because I wasn't very confident in their offense, But I thought their defense could have, shut down Andy Dalton no problems. And to let him go up and down the field like that was truly embarrassing. That's why, I was half jokingly saying I think the Chiefs can put up the full 42 and a half. But honestly, if they're going to let Andy Dalton do that, what is Mahomes going to do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm very, very disappointed in this defense right now. That's relatively healthy with Aaron Donald and Ramsey still on the field.
Yeah, you have two of the highest paid defensive players in the NFL on your defense. You have the highest paid player in the history of the NFL on defense on your team. And this is the type of play they're putting out there. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just like you said, they made Randy Dalton look like Andy Dalton.
They look
again.
like Colt McCoy was fantastic 2 weeks ago against them.
Yeah.
In LA.
They're a mess. Their Super Bowl hangover in the biggest media market in the world is probably them still going out every, other night and still living that life, because they're definitely not playing like they had any intention of repeating or, even winning games at this point. So they're kind of DOA. And you know what else? Can we just point out who has this game? Does NBC have this game? Or
no, this is an afternoon game.
So this is an afternoon game. Who paid for this?
Somebody who was expecting a repeat of their game a few years ago.
I know, right? Imagine.
Not going to work out for you guys this time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Somebody paid big bucks to get the Tampa KC game a few weeks ago too, in that slot where there was only one other.
It was the Tampa Bay Rams game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was the Rams game. And then you turn around and this is the exact same thing.
Yup.
The exact same thing. Oy.
Start your Chiefs, people. Start all your Chiefs.
Yeah. Start all your Chiefs.
If you didn't already know.
Yeah, right? Of course. So on to our last game of the slate. And it's, again, not going to be a great one. But we have Andy Dalton, not Randy, and the Saints going up against the 49ers. And you're liking the over at 43 here. What are you seeing when you see this matchup?
Yeah, this number is way too low. I mean, if you've watched San Fran the last few weeks, they've been awesome offensively. I mean, everybody is on the field now, and they looked terrific on Monday night. The combination of Kittle, McCaffrey, and Debo, Brandon Ayuk, and Jimmy G not having bad Jimmy G plays, just having a ton of good Jimmy G plays. And this offense was terrific. They're going up against a New Orleans defense that's allowed the 6th most points in the league this year, and they have the 2nd fewest takeaways in the league. This is not a good Saints defense. So I think San Fran can easily put up 30-plus points in this game. So I really just need the Saints to put up like 13, 14 points. And I think they can do that. I mean, I think Dalton has enough good plays in him where they can get a couple touchdowns. So I think this is a relatively simple, straightforward over for me. I'm surprised it was as low as 43.
Yeah, and Chris Olave, if he could take advantage of, Jalen Ramsey the way that he did, these Niners corners are
decent. They're banged up.
Yeah, they're banged up, but they're not gonna put up quite as much of a fight. I think that it's easy enough that they're gonna, get that 13 to 17 that you hope for there. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, I mean, is any team, besides like the Dolphins, like we talked about, is any team quite playing as efficiently as the Niners are, at least offensively? I would say no, because they have a lot of weapons. Who are you supposed to sell out and stop on this team?
You stop one, the other guy is going to come in right behind you and just torch you.
Right. They're just going to keep eating. And, we've talked about this a lot. The addition of Christian McCaffrey has opened up this team, even when he doesn't put up the hugest numbers. Like we got burned a couple weeks ago on a, rushing and receiving over underdogs total. But it's even when he's not producing the numbers, he's producing on the field because defenses are hyper aware of where he's at all times. And they forget where a lethal threat like George Kittle or Debo Samuel are. It's crazy when you add a player to your team and it happens to now be your best player on the team. That's super interesting to, a case study to watch happen. You add a player to your offense that's better than any player on your team, and now you're really good at offense. What do you know?
Yeah. Who would have thought?
I think the other thing is how can you not play good at quarterback when you're living Jimmy G's life? I don't know if you saw it, but him, Christian,
Yeah.
George, and I think Juice were at the Golden State game. Every dancer on Golden State went up and said hi to
Well,
just to Jimmy.
his attractiveness really comes out when he's in that setting. No shot at the other guys, but it really stood out when he was sitting in between all of those guys.
Bro, poor
It made a little bit
Christian.
more sense.
Bro, poor Christian McCaffrey. They at least, the girls went to Jimmy and then at least said hi to George as they walked by. Juice on one end. I don't even know if anybody looked at him. I think one girl looked at Christian and was like, "Is this your little brother?" And
He's
then
all
kept going.
good, though. I think he's all set. If you've seen any pictures of his,
they're fine.
He's all set.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I think that just indicates, like you said, Jimmy GQ, such a good-looking man, and I don't understand how he's not the best quarterback in the league. Because when you look good, doesn't the saying go, "You look good, play good"? That's how I thought it went, right? You'd think. So maybe he's finding it in himself. He's got that confidence. I hope he took a couple of those cheerleaders home. That would have been a nice draw. But that does it for us tonight for the game picks. And that actually wraps us up for week 11 or week 12 we're into now. Losing count. You get so far in and then you realize, oh, wait, we still have 2 more months of this too, though. So still plenty of opportunities to make some money. We're going to be back same time next week. You're not going to want to miss it. If you missed over underdogs, you're kind of out of luck because we did it for the Thanksgiving slate. So nothing for the games this Sunday. But if you're in the mood for player prop picks, head straight over to our Discord. You get in there through our Patreon. And you can ask us directly. We'll get you set up with player prop picks. Our guy Vaughn, he dropped a player props article every single week. So you can definitely check that out. You're not going to want to miss it. Like I said, and check out all of the IN betting teams' work over at Important Nonsense. They're killing it. These guys are absolutely on fire in everything that they do. We're just printing money over there. At least they are. And last but certainly not least, shop.importantnonsense.com. Promo code LOCK to get a nice little discount on all the stuff in the shop. We just dropped the new Christmas collection, the holiday collection. You can get your ugly Christmas sweater in mustard yellow of Russell Wilson burning the turkey, just like he, is going to do on Sunday when they go under 36.5. And yeah, so that about does it. V, do you have any parting words for the people at home?
I'm excited for this week. We're getting down to it towards the end of the regular season. And I'm very interested to kind of watch some of these teams who are right on the edge and see if they can kind of prove themselves. Chargers, Ravens, Bengals, Seahawks. Can you make a run? Can you be a playoff team? And can you make some noise in the playoffs? This is the time of year when we find those things out. So this is what I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, there's going to be teams that, deserve to make the playoffs that don't. And there's going to be teams that don't deserve to make the playoffs that do. And we're going to want to know which ones to bet against.
We're talking about the NFC South for people who didn't realize.
For anybody who did not know, somebody has to win the NFC South. So anyway, I couldn't have said it better myself, my friend. And that does it for us. And until next time, everybody, good night and Godspeed.